Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I've got a viewer requested episode, a walk around of my 732 Bobcat. Now, I actually got two of these machines. This one here, which I bought just before my son's birth in 2016. It is a 1980 Bobcat 732. Coincidentally, that's a model year I was made as well. And we also have a 1981 model machine, which is at my dad's place, but they're identical. So 732 evolved from the 720 series, and they had the 730 series. Here's a brochure I have of it. This is when it was in its prime. They made them from approximately 1978 to 1981, I believe, is the last year they made them, when they evolved into the 40 series. And there's the backside. If you want to read that, you can just pause. And unfortunately, I can't find my 740 series brochure right now. But how Bobcat worked at the time was the model number was indicative of how big the machine was and also what it had for an engine. So the 7 meant it was a 1,300-pound machine. How they come up with that, I don't know. The 600 series was a 1,000-pound rated operating capacity. The 500 series was, I believe, 800 pounds, and the 400 series was 600 pounds. Then the second number, in this case the 3, is just the evolutionary number, I guess. So in the 720s, it was a different body style altogether. And then in the 740 series, physically the machine isn't any different. In fact, they used a lot of the pictures of 730 series for pictures in the early 740 series brochures, and unfortunately I can't find the one I have, otherwise I would show you. And then the third number would tell you if it's air-cooled gas or air-cooled diesel. So if the model number ended in a 0, it meant it had an air-cooled gas engine. If it ended in a 1, it had a air-cooled diesel engine. A 2, which is this case here, it would have a liquid-cooled gas engine. And then a 3 would mean it was a liquid-cooled diesel engine. Now, for a while, there was also a 645 around and an 825. What exactly those numbers stood for, I don't know. But the 825 had a capacity of 1,500 pounds, and it was a Perkins liquid-cooled diesel engine in that machine. The 645 I know nothing about because I've never seen one. There was also a 725 kicking around for a little bit. I saw one years and years ago. It was made by TCM for Bobcat, and it had actually, I don't even remember what it had in it for an engine. But anyway, and then this eventually evolved into the 750 series, and they only had the 751, which started life with a Peugeot, I think it was, diesel engine. But that was not air-cooled, it was liquid-cooled, but they went with the 751 anyway. And eventually it had a Kubota diesel engine in it, and there was also the 753, which always had a Kubota diesel engine in it. And then when they went to the S series, it became an S130, and then at some point Bobcat switched things up again. I believe it became the S450, and now I don't even know what it is anymore. But anyway, back to this machine. This one is one that I bought, like I say, in the first one we bought in 1989 when it was 8 years old. And it's been in the family ever since. And this one here we picked up in 2016, like I said, just before my son was born. And I picked it up as non-running. One of the reasons I picked it up was because I thought I can either fix it, or B, I'd have a good source of spare parts for the other machine. Well, it turns out this one here is actually a very solid machine. The only real issue with it was the engine was very worn out. I did end up getting it running and used it for a number of years like that, and then end up rebuilding it. You'll have to excuse the dirt all over it. I just came back from sweeping a bunch of lawns with it, and then I just literally just came off a job with it here this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to clean it, but so just kind of ignore the dust. The operator compartment is very simple for back in the day. One of the big things, the big differences between the 730 and the 740s, actually really the biggest difference is that the 730 doesn't have a tilt-up operator's cab, where the 740s does. And they only briefly, very briefly, I don't even know how many machines they made, but not many, made a 733 which had a Kubota liquid-cooled diesel engine in it. And then they dropped the 730's engine, which was a Wisconsin air-cooled gas engine, and they just went with the 741, which had a Deutz diesel engine that was air-cooled. The 742, which had the same engine as this machine, the Ford KSG 416 or FL98 as it is, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then they eventually switched over to a Mitsubishi 4G something or other engine for the 742B series, and the 743 always had a Kubota diesel engine. I think it's the 1703, but don't quote me on that, I'd have to look it up. But yeah, the big difference here is this cab does not tilt up, so in order to get to the hydrostatics and all that, you have to take the seat out and this little cover on the bottom, versus on the 740 series machine, the whole cab tilts up and out of the way and you can get at everything. It makes maintenance quite a bit easier. And one of the big things that often gets overlooked is the U-joint between the pump and the engine. And actually on our other machine, we didn't even know about it. And eventually what happened is that U-joint failed because it wasn't greased, and it caused a lot of damage. It's a very, very common failure on these machines because nobody gets in there to grease it. And then when they don't get greased, they end up seizing up, and then they break, and then they thrash around, and if you're lucky, they just break off and nothing really happens. But if you're unfortunate, like we were with that machine, it broke near the pump end, and then you have this massive imbalance, and it vibrated around in there and just tore everything to pieces. And my dad thought the machine was exploding under his rear end when it happened. So anyway, it survived that debacle. We ended up rebuilding the engine and stuff at the same time and putting it all back together. Another common failure issue on these series machines is the tilt tower here. It's not very unusual to see that these have been reinforced or welded because they tend to be a little bit weak here in this area, and when people abuse the machine, ram them into stuff with the bucket tilted down, this piece here can actually literally detach, which it did on our other machine while my dad was running it, and push the cylinder up out of the way. And that's usually not a good day. So that one's been repaired, but my dad didn't quite get the geometry 100% right, but that's besides the point. And then they also tend to crack in this area here, and people will put patches on there. This one here is actually in really nice shape. It hasn't been cracked or welded. Here it has been, but not in this area, and I don't think this tilt tower has ever gotten damaged. Now this machine here too, you'll notice it's got these two trailer ball looking things, and those are for attaching a backhoe attachment to give it extra rigidity, that when you're digging, it doesn't put all the load on your tilt cylinder, and when you're actually sitting on the backhoe, it throws you all over the place if you don't have these. Now I just recently got a 909 backhoe attachment for this machine, and there's some videos that I've put together for that. One's already out, and the other one I should have out sometime in the next couple days. Other than that, every attachment that works on the 740 series will work on the 730 series. The tires are all the same. Physically, everything is virtually identical. Then the other big difference is the 740 series have a much bigger fuel tank. The filler neck is actually up here, and it goes down quite a bit more, and it has a lot more capacity. They called it the full day fuel tank. It was a 13-gallon fuel tank versus this one here I think only holds about 8. So it makes a big difference if you're working the machine hard. You really do have to watch your fuel, and in most cases, as is this case with this machine, the fuel gauge doesn't work anymore. So you just have to make sure that you keep an eye on your fuel, because it's kind of embarrassing when you run out of fuel on a job site. Then in the engine room, there's some minor differences between the 740s and the 730s. One of the big differences, and again, excuse the mess in here, it's a little dusty because, like I said, I was just doing a bunch of street sweeping, and I do have an oil leak on this one here that I just haven't quite managed to seal up, so it does have a bit of oil. But the big difference here is the location of the exhaust. So on this machine, the exhaust is on the right hand side of the engine. On the 740 series, they actually took the exhaust and mounted it up here behind the radiator and then ran the exhaust pipe out. So all you have is a little pipe going up and then into the exhaust, and then it comes out the other end here. That is one of the big differences. And the other difference is the starter on the 730s is on the left hand side. On the 740s, they've moved it to the right-hand side, and also the battery and whatnot. And then the expansion tank is down in this area here. And I believe another difference is they have a water temperature gauge. This one here just has a plug in there, and then over on the far right-hand side here is a switch that tells you that your engine's overheating, and it turns on the idiot light in the cab. But other than that, there's really no big difference between the 740s and the 730s. To get the engine out, it's actually really easy. All you got to do is, there's 4 bolts on the subframe, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. Undo them, undo a couple lines, and then the engine slides right out the back. You can have this engine out in 20 minutes if you need to. And I've had it in and out a few times now. One time when I rebuilt, this is actually not the engine that it came with. I had this engine as a spare, and if you look way back in my videos, there is a video of me rebuilding it. It's mostly just still pictures put together as kind of a video, but it's there if you want to have a look at it. And then the engine that was originally in this machine when I bought it is sitting in my shop waiting on my ambition to rebuild it. But it's very easy to get in and out. Sharp-eyed observers will see that there's another oil pressure gauge here. I put that in because I wanted to see what the actual oil pressure was when I rebuilt the machine, and I just never took it out. So I do have a manual indication of what the oil pressure is back here. And then other than that, virtually identical to the 742. This machine here, I've actually upgraded with an electronic ignition, which I can't tell you how much more awesome that is, because there's just no words to describe how awesome it is, because these things are pretty problematic in burning up points and condensers. Especially there's a ballast resistor that's supposed to be between your battery and your ignition coil, and in most cases those have been removed and you'll go through points pretty quick. But with this electronic ignition, it's not an issue anymore, and it makes tuning up the engine really a thing of the past, because it never needs adjustment. There's no points to adjust, no condenser or anything like that needs changing, and it's just all around wonderful. The ignition timing is much easier to set as well. Other than that, that's pretty much all there is to it. It's a pretty basic machine. I've got a set of pallet forks on it. I've also got the sweeper for it, and this wood splitter I built a number of years back. It works okay, and I've set it up so I can run it off my little dump trailer. But then over here is by far my most favorite attachment of all. This is what Bobcat calls a combination bucket, also known as a 4-in-1 bucket. It is absolutely the handiest thing ever. It becomes a grapple, a dozer, a scraper, you name it, and it does basically everything except fly. And it's just a wonderful attachment, and I highly recommend anybody who has a machine like this to get one. All right, so that is your walk around of the 732. Hopefully this meets your expectations for the viewer who suggested it, and I will talk to you guys on the next one. Thanks. Bye now.